What would happen if just 4 to 5% of those 30 to 40 million non-voting Christians got off the sidelines, registered to vote, and showed up at the polls? The church will have a voice.
My name is Chad Connelly. When I founded Faith Wins, it was to spread the truth that God's role in America is irreplaceable. Faith wins when people of faith vote their values. Our mission is laser focused on educating, activating, and mobilizing faith leaders, providing them with the tools, the resources, and the messaging to leverage their impact in the political and the governmental arenas. We cultivate, develop relationships with pastors who share the whole counsel of God, who stand for truth. In just a few short years, we've engaged with over 50,000 faith leaders from all 50 states. We've done hundreds of meetings with some of America's leading congressmen, senators, political thought leaders, pastors, and more. And most importantly, we've actually registered over 1 million new evangelical voters during an unprecedented time, an unparalleled success, and all accomplished with just a part-time team. People ask me all the time, what's the secret? It's God's ordained, from the pulpit to the pews, committed to faith, family, and freedom. Because with Him, all things are possible.
This is our 1776 moment.
Now more than ever, America's founding principles that were built on biblical values are under attack.
The battle for the soul of our nation has never been greater than it is today.
God has commanded us as His children to be salt and light.
America's great awakenings and revivals have always begun in the local church.
People of faith, do not underestimate your influence.
You can influence policy decisions and elect public servants with a grounded biblical view who will stand for religious freedom.
Support traditional marriage and the family.
Defend and support Israel.
A voice for the unborn.
People who will defend our democracy and have secure elections.
If believers won't step up to the plate and get involved, who will?
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 You know, it's really not about politics or party or politicians or personality. It's about policies and principles that most closely align with our biblical worldview, from the courthouse to the state house to the White House and beyond. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How are y'all doing?
Please welcome the president and founder of Faith Wins, Chad Connelly.
Do y'all believe that this is our 1776 moment? Because I sure do. I appreciate my buddy Jeff Hunt for having me. It's an honor to be at the Western Conservative Summit. I've watched you guys for years. I've been in here. It's time to take back some of these states in the West from people who are undermining America. Let me give you a little bit of background. You think that politics doesn't matter to people in the church. Well, in Virginia, we got really involved. 2 years ago, they had a governor who cheered when they passed a new law in the legislature to let babies they'd already tried to abort, who lived through the abortion, die comfortably. That was the wording of the new law. Their governor then stood up and applauded, which in my mind is just evil, y'all. That's just wicked. This year, the new governor prayed in Jesus' name. That's the difference. You know, our little team of pastors, we didn't tell anybody who to vote for, but we did tell them to vote biblical values. I don't believe that life is a political issue. I believe it's a spiritual one. I don't believe that traditional marriage or religious liberty or defense of Israel are political issues. They're spiritual issues that have been politicized by the media and the left. But listen, that doesn't remove our responsibility. I'm not a pastor. I'm a Sunday school teacher and a deacon. But we have a Matthew 5 obligation to be salt and light in the public arena. And just because those issues have been politicized doesn't remove our responsibility before God. So I want to give you a little bit of background. I was state party chairman in South Carolina, and it was at that time, a lot of y'all know the presidential preference primary process runs right through South Carolina. There's the Iowa caucuses, the New Hampshire primary, then it comes to South Carolina. So I did every show on television, every political show, and on one of those shows, I was kind of beating up the party for leaving out the faith vote. You know, why do you guys assume that Christians are going to vote for you? You shouldn't assume. They don't want to be R's, they don't want to be D's, but they do want to vote for people who most closely align with the biblical worldview. And like we say in South Carolina, Jesus ain't running, right? Jesus is not running. Therefore, we're always voting for the lesser of two evils. They're two imperfect, unholy, unrighteous people. You better find out what they stand for and what they believe in. So I did that talk. I think I was on MSNBC at the time, and a guy named Reince Priebus saw me. He said, hey, I'd like to talk to you. I'm a believer too. We meet after the election. I was embarrassed as a state party chairman because I thought, hey, we're going to win this thing. And so Reince and I put together a thing called GOP Faith. I could be the first ever national director of faith engagement for either party. At that time, I went to over 40 states and spoke to some 40 or 50,000, 60,000 pastors. In fact, that's how I met Jeff Hunt. I was coming out here to your state in that time. In the 2014 election, we flipped 9 Senate seats because we focused on the church. Not who to vote for, not what party, not about the candidate, but about biblical issues. In 2016, of course, we set a new record, not because of what we did, because it was a time when God's people were rising up saying, wait a minute, enough's enough. And so I left the RNC in 2017. I think I'm the only senior staffer not to go work in the White House, and I started my own deal. I felt like it was a God thing to start Faith Wins and use the power of the church to just get people voting. Y'all, they want to be involved. They just need some leadership. And so these last 5 years, I've been all over the country. Since January 1st this year, we've been to 17 states. I'll be in Fort Collins at Front Range Baptist tomorrow night, taking around a guy named David Barton, because I believe it's a time to tell folks that God's role in this nation is irreplaceable. We better get involved. In the state of Virginia in particular, even though we registered 1 million new evangelicals this last cycle, our little team registered 77,000 people in churches who had never voted before. The governor's margin was 64,000. I don't know if it made a difference or not, but it sure looks that way. But bigger than that, those pastors, when they began to lead, they found out that people in the churches wanted to get involved. They just didn't know how. We know how. We use this little QR code, and nobody understands QR codes. You got to be a 12-year-old, right? And so, but if you hold your phone up to it, your camera phone, it'll take you to a website and let you get our email address, and we'll email you. We have somebody that all they're doing is matching precincts and counties with church people. In Virginia in particular, those 312 churches that registered 77,000 new evangelicals also recruited 1,343 poll watchers. How many of y'all think this is a time we better keep our eyeballs on polls? I promise you, the first thing I ask, and this is pretty easy, our first ask is this: can you do a nonpartisan voter registration drive in your church? Don't tell them who to vote for, don't tell them how to vote, but tell them to look at biblical issues and vote for that person. Can you do it? We'll help you do that. Hit that QR code. We'll make sure you have the tools and resources. Secondly, do you want to be a poll watcher? We're matching up people in precincts. You wouldn't believe I could stand here all day and tell you stories. We actually stopped seasonal workers from voting in the state of Virginia. A pastor went to a voting place during the centralized absentee precinct, and they had a sign up, now hiring seasonal workers to count votes in early voting. My pastor buddy said, what are seasonal workers? They said, well, you know, they pick fruit in the summer and the fall, and they're available. And he said, can I bring my church? That's how it started, y'all. I promise you, even if your pastor doesn't think so, even if you don't think so, there are people in your church who are throwing stuff at the television set going, what are we going to do about all this stuff going on? I've been all over the country, and I believe God's doing something in our nation. I believe people have been sitting back and watching this stuff go on and say, enough's enough. It's time for conservatives and believers, Christians who love our nation, God-fearing, flag-waving, America-loving, but honoring God people to say, I'm going to work hard to take my nation back. That's what we're doing at Faith Wins. We want to help you. Hit that QR code. We want to get you involved. God bless y'all. Have an awesome day.